What's up? Welcome to Tales Tomorrow. I am Morrow, your storyteller for today, and with me I have some more RPG horror stories to cover. I mentioned before that I do Final Fantasy XIV D&D. I've been recording every session so far. I have a buddy that's starting up a Destiny D&D, like from Destiny and Destiny 2. And I also really want to try to dabble with Star Wars D&D. I found the handbook for that, and I know I really should finish one campaign before I start another, but it's just so exciting. It's just so fun seeing all these systems being converted towards D&D, and maybe even take time to learn some other systems like Pathfinder or Call of Cthulhu. Anyway, let's get to our first RPG horror story for today. The game that ended my marriage. Hello all. I started writing about this in another subreddit, but I learned a few things along the way and wanted to give this another try and incorporate some feedback. The story begins many years ago, and while it's an RPG horror story, it has a happy ending for both me and my ex. This is a story about the game that ended my first marriage. I had recently graduated college and was still working at a school library that I had been working as a student. My girlfriend at the time was also working there. We lived together, rode the same bus to work, worked on the same floor, a few feet from one another, and we had the same group of friends. It would be safe to say that there were definitely already some codependency going on. Always loved superhero stories, and I wanted to start a Mutants and Masterminds game to explore my interest. My girlfriend was game, and we found several friends and friends of friends who were interested as well. And that brings us to our cast. Please keep in mind that all this was several years before the MCU was even a thing, so all overlap with MCU and DC films is coincidental. I'll also note that the names I'm using here aren't the actual code names of the characters, just nicknames I'm giving them here. The cast. Super Soldier. Myself. I was playing a mostly non-powered hero who uses tactical knowledge to lead the team. Cruisebeard. The DM and the villain of the story. I'm not going to make this political, but he was really sensitive about the fact that he was sometimes compared to Texas politician Ted Cruz in appearance. And if he finds the story, I want that to be what sticks in his mind, since he otherwise gets off on being called the villain. Ratty, my girlfriend at the time and later wife. The rat thing isn't an insult. I love rats, and so does she. She played a telepath who could influence social mammals, particularly rats. Speedster, girlfriend of Cruisebeard. She played a roller derby girl with speed powers that were starting to branch into minor time manipulation. Lead singer, one of my closest friends at the time. He always kind of played the leather jacket wearing badass type, and this was no exception. He was a metal vocalist with sonic powers. Jock, wasn't in the game for long, but plays a bigger role anyway. He played a high school football player who discovered his mutant strength and endurance during his homecoming game. Our characters were really protective of him. Chef, a close friend of mine and former roommate of Ratty. She played chef with temperature control powers, but was really creative with them, icing stairs while they were being pursued by bad guys, etc. Cruisebeard also had a DMPC, an entrepreneur who had a suit of power armor but was more inspired by medieval aesthetics than by Tony Stark, preferring swords to energy weapons and missiles. He actually handled the character well, using her mostly as a person who hired the rest of us and only bringing her in for games when someone else was DMing, and she was equal in power to our own characters. After we had been playing for almost a year, Jock had to drop from the game. We thought he might be able to rejoin at some point, so we ran a session where his character lost a fight and was in a coma. It was a highly emotional session. Tears were shed. We parted ways hoping he would one day return. His character being the youngest also created a really big narrative drive for our remaining characters who, as I said, had been protective of him. The good. So the game had already been going really well. I created a forum for us to have standalone scenes between sessions that Cruisebeard would award XP for, and most of us were writing in there every day. Speedster and Chef, both accomplished artists, drew sketches of our characters. It was one of the best campaigns I've ever been in. Cruz had expressed an interest alternating with others to DM, and I had some ideas after Jock's departure. I pitched an idea to him and he loved it immediately. With some time travel elements that had been introduced by Speedster's character, I ran a game that launched the players into an alternate reality with dark version of our original characters. Ratty's character had vast armies of dogs and rats patrolling the sewers of the city and preventing anyone from leaving. Speedster's character had lost all touch with reality after slipping in and out of time and had just embraced the chaos of it all, abandoning morality and empathy and just pursuing her next rush. My Super Soldier had become the group's Black Ops operative, taking out criminals in ways that could be officially disavowed by the team. Chef's character, terrified of what the team had become, had gone into hiding and was building a resistance force. Cruisebeard's character had animated all of her suits of armor and had built a battalion that encircled the entire city, keeping it safe. Lead singer was kind of unique in all of this. In his alternate history version, he was kind of going with the flow, doing what his friends were doing without really having a kind of evil conviction about it. He opened up to me later that this has taught him a lot about his character. He was ride or die through and through. He was only a hero now because he was around heroes. If his friends had been villains, he'd been a villain. All this was pretty standard stuff, but then the player found out why this had all happened. They broke into Cruisebeard's compound to find a memorial to Jock. In this reality, Jock hadn't slipped into a coma. He had died in battle, and that event had put us all on dark paths in this timeline, coping with failure to protect him by seeking more and more power to stop it from happening to anyone else. The gaming group loved the session, eventually escaping the timeline pursued by one of the alternative Cruisebeard's machines, which would become a major villain. I eventually end up doing alternating GM days with Cruisebeard. The forum became more and more active between games. We're drawing fan art of one another's characters, writing one-on-one scenes together, and pitching ideas for new games. The bad. So I had known Cruisebeard for several years and I already had suspicion about some mental health issues. Hey, I have some of my own. But I was noticing more and more instances where I can only describe as pathological lying. And it was getting worse. He once claimed he had jumped out of a helicopter without a parachute and survived. He claimed he had eaten human flesh before. Every day with him involved a new and more elaborate lie. Who watching this video has met a pathological liar that has made up a lot of crazy, insane, outrageous stories that logically don't make sense in the slightest whatsoever and that turn out to be lies? I kind of get a feeling that most of us know or have met a pathological liar once in our lifetime. I mean, especially on the internet. You could say anything you want on the internet, including a lot of lies and make up a bunch of stuff and everything. Except me. I am definitely 100% a tiefling in real life. Honest. Wink. I almost called off a whole friendship one night, and when we were playing Never Have I Ever with an out-of-town friend I had invited. I think everyone knows how this works, but whoever turned it is to say Never Have I Ever, followed by something they've never done, and then all the other players who have done that thing take a drink. If you say Never Have I Ever done skinny dipping, then everyone who's gone skinny dipping takes a drink. Lead singer said, Never have I ever killed anyone. Now, while lead singer had no way of knowing this, the guest I had invited had recently been in a fatal car accident. It wasn't his fault. The other driver ran a red light, but he had killed the other driver. The guest got pretty emotional and took a slow sip as we all looked on quietly, and the Cruisebeard took a sip as well. My guest looked at Cruisebeard with tears in his eyes, thinking he had found someone with a common experience that he could empty his heart out to. The guest asked Cruisebeard if they could go outside and talk. I don't know what story Cruisebeard made up, but it apparently was outlandish enough that the guest realized it was a lie. He left sobbing without saying goodbye, and I've only seen him once since. Even then, when I asked about that night, all the guest could say was, that guy's really effed up. Still, like I said, I was going through my own mental health issues. I was raised by a father with a severe bipolar disorder who was also prone to making up stories. So I let it slide to be there for my friend. That was a huge mistake. What I might say may sound a little bit incendiary, but like, good friends don't actively keep lying to each other all the time. If you're getting to know somebody, obviously not gonna tell them everything about you, all your past, and all your secrets and everything. It's gonna be slowly worked in as you get to know each other and stuff. But like, not if you're already friends with somebody and you just continue to lie and lie and lie. That's not a good friend. If somebody just keeps lying, pathological or not, at some point, if you want to keep friends, you gotta stop lying to them. You gotta be honest with them. You gotta be direct with them. And for the guy to probably lie to the guy that actually had the car wreck and thought he found somebody that can maybe relate to, and that's not okay. That's not okay at all. I honestly don't know why you didn't give Cruz hell for that. That's messed up. The ugly. Ratty and I had started off girlfriend and boyfriend, but over the course of the game, we eventually married. All the players were in attendance. In fact, lead singer officiated the wedding and Chef was our DJ. It was, however, a rough relationship. We're both working jobs that barely paid more than minimum wage, both struggled with mental health issues. I was seeing a therapist, but she refused. I wanted to move to a bigger city with more career options, but she refused. She was even uncomfortable when I started working out because she didn't want to work out and was worried that I was judging her, even though I made it clear that I didn't care and that working out was more about my mental health than my physical health. She even tried to dissuade me from working out, saying she thought I might get too big. when I was severely underweight at the time and there were no actual risk of this. To make things worse, we had a pregnancy scare that had made us both completely reconsider our relationship. We've made it past our first anniversary and we're making things work. Hell, things were even looking up. Our sex life was improving, we were bonding over our common creative interests, and we were both starting to talk about future ambitions. Then the game changed. I was doing most of the DMing at this point and I was managing the forum, and one of the scenes between lead singer and Speedster had started to turn sexual. They asked me how they should handle it. We had a group meeting to talk about everyone's comfort level. I didn't really want to DM any adult scenes, and likewise, Chef wasn't comfortable reading them in the forums. All of us agreed that our impersonal game should fade to black for stuff like that. So we came to an agreement that there would be a separate space in the forum for those scenes with the appropriate warning flags. The scenes would be canon, but they would not be discussed in detail in our in-person game. However, I would still award XP for writing them. Awarding XP for sex scenes? I guess, wait a second. So you could just have sex to get XP? They're awarding XP for writing sex scenes. You literally farming XP by banging. An interesting idea. Joking though. Maybe. Let's get back to this story. Eventually, Ratty asked me if it would be okay with her joining on an ERP with Speedster. I had to think about it for a long time, but I trusted her and I trusted my Speedster. She and I had been bonding over books and music, and I considered her one of my closest friends. Ratty eventually branched out on doing adult RP with lead singer as well, but I overlooked it. Felt somewhat uncomfortable, but it was still just RP, and if this was the outlet Ratty needed, so be it. If you're uncomfortable about it, you should probably say and speak up that you're uncomfortable about it. I feel like this moment here is going to be the turning point where things kind of start spiraling down a little bit with like jealousy and other stuff. It's gonna go bad. And that's when the worst night came. Ratty and I had gone to visit Cruisebeard and Speedster at their house to discuss new game ideas. While there, I picked up some of Cruisebeard's comics and manga and flipped through them. Found some disturbing material involving illustrations of underage characters in abusive situations. What? I was furious. Cruisebeard had some creative excuses about those being from a friend, and that, hey, they were just illustrations anyway, so they weren't illegal. I didn't buy the excuses. Ratty did. I was tired. This bordering on 2 AM at this point, and I didn't want to be around Cruisebeard anymore. I told Ratty I wanted to go home. She said she wanted to stay and chat with Speedster. Speedster promised to drive Ratty home after the two of them were done chatting, and still shaking, I drove home. Regardless of if it was like legal or not, I mean, I know like lolly and shote is a thing and stuff. If you have material of underage characters getting abused or especially assayed, that just looks fucked. You look fucked when you have that stuff. I don't think it's okay. And for them to make excuses to be like, it's fine, it's okay. What are the excuses are? They're 300-year-old lollies from some anime shit. I don't fucking know. Like, listen, I get it. People have weird fetishes and stuff, but you put it away. You don't just lay it out for somebody else to find it. You're not gonna be able to explain it away. Whatever you're into, the least you can do is take your whips and chains and ball gag and stuff them deep in your sex dungeon like any other random person and put on lock and key for nobody else to find. Also, don't you be giving me this look as if you don't have a sex dungeon of your own. I was teaching Sunday school at a Ukrainian church and had to be up and ready in a few hours. I passed out as soon as I got home. I heard Ratty unlocking the door just as my alarm clock was going off. She said she had things to talk to me about and finally gripped my hand, confessing that she and Speedster had kissed after I left. I was upset, but it sounded like something we could work through. Told her we could talk about it after I got back from church. When I got back, her story sounded pretty innocent. Just a quick peck. I told Ratty that while I have no problem with open relationship, they aren't for me, and that I hope we could agree that we would remain exclusive and this couldn't go any further, and Ratty enthusiastically agreed. Trying to patch things up, I set up another game. Speedster, Ratty, and Cruisebeard seemed uncharacteristically uncomfortable the whole night. When we got back home after the game, Ratty began confessing more. Had been more than just a peg between her and Speedster, and Cruisebeard had been involved as well. It started at Cruisebeard's house, and when it was time for Speedster to go to work at the hotel that she and Cruisebeard managed, they had taken it there, taking turns making out with Ratty in a back room while the other managed the front desk. And of course, it went further than that. My wife had cheated on me with two people who I thought were my best friends at the same time. this is supposed to be an RPG horror story. I mean, there was a TTRPG involved, but this is beyond that. Yeah, this is beyond that. Yes, it gets worse. Every time Ratty and I would talk, more details would come out about that night. Every night she would tell me, that's it, that's all that happened. And then the next she would admit that it was a lie. I didn't know what to believe anymore. I had already confronted Speedster and Cruisebeard and cut off all ties with them. Cruisebeard started rumors that actually it had been Chef and I who had been having an affair, which even Ratty shut down. I took time off to go visit my family, having a heart-to-heart with my sister, my closest confidant in the world. Ratty was living with lead singer and his wife, waiting for me to decide what I wanted to do. I only took a week, but it came back and told her we were through. It wasn't just the lies of the cheating, but that we wanted very different things out of life. My parents had given us a car, which I told her she could keep, and we had few assets other than that to split up. It was a fairly amicable divorce, all things considered. She and I were still working at the library together, still riding the same bus, etc. So I took a dive. I quit. I pulled money out of my 401k to tide me over until I found a new job. I do not advise ever doing this, but that's what I needed at the time. Spend time with my family. Since we had mostly the same friend group, and since I didn't want anyone choosing sides, I just didn't tell most people what had happened. I told Jock and Chef, who had remained close friends, and my sister. That was about it. Meanwhile, Ratty told everyone her side of the story. Most of that friend group still won't talk to me to this day. People take her side of the story and won't talk to the guy because what? Maybe they're just vowing for a friend, or maybe Ratty told a different story. But in most situations, if you tell somebody, hey, yeah, I cheated on somebody, they'll be like, what are you doing? Why would you do that? Why would you do that? You ruined it for yourself. You ruined that for yourself. How did we go from talking about a TTRPG to like talk about drama? This is the weirdest story. This is not even an RPG horror story anymore. But at this point, I'm compelled to finish it. But things get better. I was already on meds for depression, and Ratty went on meds after this as well. She cut off all contact with Speedster and Cruisebeard. Both continued seeing therapists or working through our respective issues. A couple of times she reached out about trying to make things work again, but I just felt there was nothing there to fix anymore. She started seeing an ex-roommate of mine, and the best DM I've ever had, by the way. May have to cover those glory days in another post, and they hit it off. He inherited his family farm, and that was far more in line with her ambitions in life. It's not my thing, but I respect it. I'm glad she found it, and I'm glad she's living a better life. I never could have given that to her. As for myself, well, I mentioned before that Ratty and I had the same group of friends, and that I was trying hard not to make them choose sides. So I decided I needed new friends who weren't a part of the whole thing, and I joined a book club. That's where I met a character that I'll call Dr. Mollusk. He was a postdoc researcher, and we immediately bonded over our literary interest. I'll save the whole ordeal for another story, but we quickly began dating, and she encouraged me to pursue my ambitions. A few years later, with her encouragement, my career skyrocketed, and we set off for a new city. Ratty is now living her country mouse life, and I'm now living my city mouse life. I know I'm happy for her, and I think she's happy for me. We were young and made mistakes. We were both now happier and healthier. Petty revenge. As for Cruisebeard, well, I'm not proud of this, but Cruisebeard was always a bit of a conspiracy theorist. He was paranoid about Freemasons. Now, I happen to have some Freemasons in my family, and this was something that had come up before, during our gaming days, that had bothered Cruisebeard. Now, I'm not saying this is what happened, but you can easily find lots of Freemason trinkets in an antique store for a very, very cheap. So if someone, I'm not saying me, wanted to, they could easily buy some of these cheap trinkets and leave them on an asshat's mailbox over the course of several weeks. I don't know how much would happen to Cruisebeard after this. I know he left the country to teach abroad. This disturbs me because I know that he confided to Jock that he had physical contact with women who claim he later found out were underage. Given his hentai collection, that definitely concerns me. But he already had a long history of just making up BS stories, so I don't know what to believe. I hope he doesn't get himself involved, but if he does, I hope somebody arrests him because Jesus fucking Christ. All I know now is that he's left in the country. Hope everyone around him is safe and that he's either miserable or finding help. Jock remains one of the best friends and we continue running games together. Chef became an academic librarian and is loving it. Speedster left Cruisebeard and has gone back to dating women outside his toxic reach. I've gotten my MBA for my city mouse life, and Ratty is raising goats out on the farm for her country mouse life. I've been married to Dr. Mollusk for over 10 years now, and Ratty has been married to her partner for the same. Can't speak for Ratty, but I don't regret our brief marriage. I learned a lot. I grew from it. And it makes me happy to know that she's probably smiling right now, no matter what happened. This story went completely off the radar for an RPG horror story, but I mean, I guess we should probably talk about some sort of important things. First of all, Cruisebeard sounds like a complete dickhead and somebody that doesn't respect other people's relationship and is actually actively willing to, well, I mean, I guess everybody participated. At the end of the day, Speedster, Ratty, and Cruise really shouldn't have done what they done, because when you cheat, everybody's involved and it's everybody's fault, obviously. It's good that the OP found a happy ending for themselves, and maybe Ratty has a happy ending, I don't know. I mean, a good thing OP has a happy ending, but like, Jesus Christ, this story was insane. Absolutely wild. The only thing I could say is, when it comes to, I guess, ERP and stuff, if somebody you're with, your partner, whatever, is wanting to do ERP with somebody else other than you, and you're uncomfortable about it, probably say something. Also, I'm hoping Cruisebeard is in jail if they're involved with underage stuff, because fucking gross. And with that, that's gonna be all our stories for today. I want to thank you very much for watching, and thanks so much for being here. If you like what I do, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Also, if the RPG Horror Stories ever goes down, or if you want to submit your own personalized horror story, email is down in the description below. I'll see you again in more Tales tomorrow. Bye-bye.